The 25-year history of the Houston Astros, 1962 to 1986, a Silver Odyssey.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
I became the first American in space just a few weeks before President Kennedy said those words. Hello, I'm Alan Shepard, and I've been an Astro fan ever since the early 1960s when we first moved to Houston. Of course, as everybody knows, in those days they were the Colt 45s, and we played the games in the old Colt Stadium. Now, occasionally as celebrities, we would get invited to sit in the owner's box. And if you think that sounds pretty fancy, let me tell you, it was only the top 2 seats in the stadium with a little bit of a roof over our heads. And it got just as humid up there, and there were just as many mosquitoes as there were down on the field. I'm sure that's where the judge got the idea for the covered stadium. But you know, the one thing that very few people know is the fact that the judge himself called me personally and asked me what we thought if he named the team the Astros. Well, of course, us astronauts were delighted to hear that, and we were honored to respond affirmatively very quickly. But you know, I've often thought as the years have gone by and looked back and remembering that, what would the judge have done had we said no? Of course, nowadays, the Astrodome is miraculous, and both of us have sure come a long way since then.
In his attempt to take to the skies, man first went through many strange ideas and dismal failures before succeeding. But persistence has its virtues, and although there must have been many times where frustration got the better of them, the early pioneers finally managed to achieve their goal. In a way, the same was true for those who struggled to see Major League Baseball come to Houston. Since 1888, baseball had been a big part of the city.
We had had such a good Major League background, and that we had had Dizzy Dean and Joe Medwick and Jim Bottomley and Chick Hafey and Tris Speaker, all playing on Houston clubs here in the old minor league days.
Those minor league days consisted mainly of the legendary Houston Buffs, who played in the city from 1928 till 1962. The Buffs were highly successful, winning back-to-back Dixie Series in 1956 and 57. The franchise was extremely popular, too, and eventually, people like local businessman George Kirksey began to talk about bringing Major League Baseball to Houston.
George Kirksey had the idea to bring Major League Baseball to Houston, and that's all we had to begin with, was an idea.
George Kirksey was probably the catalyst for the effort. He recruited Craig Cullinan and R.E. Bob Smith, who was the financier who really bankrolled the initial effort.
Bob was trying to do something for the city of Houston. He was very civic-minded. And whatever he did for the city of Houston, it was he expected nothing back from it. He thought it would be quite an asset to the city to have a big league baseball team.
Unfortunately, Major League Baseball was doing just fine, and expansion looked out of the question. So Kirksey and his partners in the newly formed Houston Sports Association first tried to convince an existing team to change cities. But when Commissioner Ford C. Frick blocked that, they got together with some equally frustrated groups and tried something else.
Bill Shea and his committee were in much the same situation that Houston and several other cities in the country found themselves. And it was from those contacts that the idea for a third major league evolved. We arranged to have a meeting with the major league owners in New York to apply for legal status as a major league.
Mr. Shea, would you tell us what happened today?
Well, today was the birth of the Continental League. The 5 founding teams consisting of New York, Toronto, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Denver, and Houston met here in New York and announced the formation of this new league.
The Continental League amounted to the greatest bluff ever run in the history of professional sports. To those who called it a paper tiger and ridiculed it as a failure, I say, look at the record. It forced the expansion of the major leagues.
So Houston was accepted into the National League, led by the efforts of Kirksey and Cullinan. But it was Bob Smith and Judge Roy Hofheinz who took control of the ball club. Still, The team was nameless, so the HSA let the fans decide.
And I thought Colt was a good name. But then I saw the Colt 45, and I thought, well, you know, Colt 45 would even be better than plain Colts, because there'd probably be 400 or 500 people under that name. So I entered the name Colt 45 as the gun rather than as the horse, and as the tiebreaker, I put the Colt 45 as the gun that won the West and will win the National League. It's the only contest I ever entered in my life, the first one and the last one.
So the Colt 45s began their inaugural season in 1962. Over the winter, General Manager Paul Richards and manager Harry Kraft had selected 23 players for a total of almost $2 million in the expansion draft, and then added to that in the spring.
Out in '62, out in Arizona, it was unreal. Probably about, I guess, about 100 and some people out there, and everybody just trying to fight for a job, and it was tough.
Some of the early Colts to tough it out included Bob Lillis, who stayed for 6 seasons, and Joey Amalfitano, who played only 1. There was Norm Larker and pitcher Dick Farrell, as well as other veterans who made up the nucleus of the team as the Colts broke camp and headed for Houston. The city, of course, was ecstatic about seeing Major League Baseball firsthand, even if it was in a temporary stadium. So on April 10th, 1962, a packed house of 32,000 watched the opener in Colt Stadium as Bobby Shantz's pitching and a pair of home runs by Roman Mejias led the Colts in an 11-2 thrashing of the Cubs.
We played the Cubs in Arizona, and they were very susceptible to left-hand pitching. So we just threw the 3 left-handers at them in the first 3 games of the season.
Al Spangler said, hey, whatever we do now, let's don't win it the first year because the stadium only seats 33,000 and the World Series check won't be enough. So let's wait till they build a new stadium before we decide to win it. I never forgot that. It was pretty funny.
What happened after that wasn't funny, as the Colts didn't fare all that well the rest of the season, losing 96 games. For expansion teams, battling superior opponents all of the time is tough enough. But the Colts also had to battle the elements.
If anybody's ever played in Old Colt 45 Stadium, anybody ever saw a game in Old Colt 45 Stadium, they remember how hot it was. And there's no ballpark ever that could generate the kind of heat that ballpark did.
Maybe if the heat had been the only problem at Colt Stadium, things would have been all right, but there were others too.
It was hot. You know, it always seemed like it rained every night at 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then they had to go and they had to fog the stadium to get rid of the mosquitoes and everything, and it was tough, but at least it was in the big leagues.
Well, that's probably what most people in Houston were saying about their Colt 45s. At least they were in the big leagues, even though that meant having to suffer through 96 losses in each of the team's first 3 seasons. Actually, there were some things the Colts did that were big league all the way. For instance, they actually had 2 no-hitters in their first 3 seasons. In 1963, Don Notabart threw the first, and the next year, Ken Johnson had the unwanted distinction of losing his. But the point was that the Colts never really embarrassed themselves on the field.
They had an aura of respectability about them, where the Mets became characterized almost immediately as lovable losers. The Astros, or the Colt 45s rather, were a team that lost with regret.
Every time I went out in the field and started a ball game, my thoughts were, we're going to win the ball game. I never thought about losing a ball game or it's going to be hard. I just thought we were going to win this ball game.
That, of course, didn't happen all that often. And at times, Colt baseball was a sad sight to see, especially in 1964. That year, the Colts not only lost their manager, but also, as if the people of Houston were trying to forget, they even lost their name.
Gather round, partners, I'll tell you the tale of the long ago team of the big western sky. Named for the firearm that saddle broke Texas, come hear the tale of the team born to die, the team born to die. I know it may sound queer, but the Colt 45 only existed 3 years. Texan showed how times can change, riding the heavens instead of the range. Old gun-toting cowboys ride into the sunset, space-age top brass wonder what's in a name. the team born to die. But nobody shed a tear for the Colt 45. They became the Astros that year.
That year was 1965, and it marked the culmination of an enormous project that Colt fans had watched from day one. Houstonians had realized that when the major leagues came to town, something would have to be done about playing during the hot and humid summers. And that something was the Astrodome, a vision of Judge Roy Hoffheinz.
The fact that we have a building like this is to his credit. I mean, Hoffheinz was convinced he had to have it. He was a showman, he was a visionary, and he wanted it, and he got it.
This is a tribute to the teamwork from the architects and engineers who had the concept, to the men on the job from American Bridge and the iron workers who have made it a reality.
Judge was a dynamo, an entrepreneur in the real sense of the word. He'd take an idea and he'd follow through with it.
In this case, Hoffheinz's idea was to build not only an indoor stadium, but something that was an outrageous showcase as well.
Roy was such a showman, and the only thing about some of Roy's ideas, they were impossible. But he never quit going for the sky. He was just a showman from his feet right on up.
Hoffheinz succeeded in his quest, making the Astrodome a sight to behold, from both its quirky amenities to its sheer size.
And it was just breathtaking. It was like you'd walked into another century or something. It was just unbelievable. I mean, it still is when you walk in, and if you sit down and really look at the building and think about it, and think that this was done 25 years ago, it's really something.
The only major league field with a full roof will replace the conventional ballpark used by the Houston Colts. This will happen on opening day in 1965, when the world's biggest indoor arena will be ready for baseball action. It's tall enough to allow construction of an 18-story building under the roof. And the great roof itself is a marvel containing more than 4,500 7 by 3 feet skylight panels. Sunlight will filter through to keep the grass on the field growing. It's 406 feet to straightaway center field in the $24 million domed stadium, suitable also for football, boxing, and conventions. Houston's weather is hot and humid in baseball months, so 2.5 million cubic feet of air will be cooled and circulated each minute. Good enough, say the fans, but can a ball be hit off the roof? The Colts gave it a whirl, and not one of their top fungo hitters came closer than 30 feet from the apex, 208 feet above second base.
The Dome finally opened on April 9th, 1965, when close to 48,000 fans came to see the first indoor baseball game ever played. It was an awe-inspiring sight, which excited even those involved from the very beginning.
Before then, we'd only seen it with 100 people maybe in it, and the workmen and everything. But the first day when they opened that thing up and it was full, it really did something to you.
The first game was an exhibition between the New York Yankees and the newly named Astros, and the first homer in the Dome came from the incomparable Mickey Mantle.
All right, here's the leadoff batter now. Mickey Mantle, and he drives one into deep center field. Wynn backs up. He's on the warning track. Near the wall, jump. He can't get it. It's a home run. Mantle hit it 406 feet from home plate, and the roar of the crowd, here it is.
After Mantle's homer, the Astros settled down and wound up winning the game 2-1 on Nellie Fox's single in the 12th inning. A few days later, on April 12th, at the first official National League game played in the Dome, 21 NASA astronauts were on hand to greet their baseball counterparts by throwing out 21 first balls. The game itself was a rather dull affair, with the Phillies shutting out the Astros 2-0. And even though the Dome was an overall success, a few details that had been overlooked began to cause problems right away.
I was on my way to spring training. I stopped through and I went into the Astrodome. It wasn't quite finished at the time, and I looked around and I told the reporters there, I said, they're going to have a problem with the ceiling, because when you look up,
and the sun shines through, you know, you get a big glare. And they said, no, everything has been checked out. I said, I guarantee you, you're gonna have a problem.
In the beginning, when you couldn't see the ball off the roof, I mean, it was almost scary because, I mean, people just couldn't see the ball. I mean, there was a lot of panic taking place. And they actually had to get people up on top of that stadium and paint those glass plastic combination slats that, you know, was supposed to allow the sunlight to come in and let the grass grow. And when they painted those, obviously the grass had no chance. AstroTurf started.
AstroTurf made its debut on April 18th, 1966, and it not only changed the game, but the meaning of the word groundskeeper, too. A year earlier, however, there was an even more significant change for the Astros. That's when Judge Roy Hoffheinz gained control of the team from Bob Smith.
I've always felt that if Mr. Smith had remained the owner of the Colt 45 franchise when it became the Astros and gone on with it, that the team itself would have been a better team over a long period of time because he wanted a winning club. He wanted to focus more on baseball.
Even though the Astros had actually been developing a number of bright young stars during the first few years, the team had never finished better than 8th. And in 1968, they had sunk to last place, finishing behind the Mets for the first time. The focus during those days was on individual stars from the farm system, like Joe Morgan, who came up in 1965 and set a club record for most hits by a rookie. Then there was Rusty Staub, an original franchise member who blossomed into a star in 1967 when he hit .333 with 44 doubles. Even though the rest of the National League usually cleaned up on the Astros, there were a few notable individual achievements from some of the other up-and-coming young stars of the late 60s. Like the night of June 18th when pitcher Don Wilson entered the record books.
22-year-old right-hander Don Wilson has pitched 8 2/3 innings of no-hit ball against the Braves. Top of the 9th, and he's full up on Aaron. And here comes that 3-2 pitch. He got it! It's all over. A swing and a miss, and Wilson has pitched a no-hitter. Well, there's no need to tell you that that young fella is being mobbed. Everybody out of that Houston dugout.
Then there was Jimmy Wynn, who lived up to his nickname of the Toy Cannon in 1967 when he drove in 107 runs and set an Astro record by hitting 37 homers.
Jimmy Wynn, the batter, with a count of 1-2 Wynn swings and drives deep into left field. Look at this one go, everybody. Up to the scoreboard. It's over the scoreboard, bouncing up onto the freeway. I can see it up there where those automobiles are going. Look at that drive. You talk about a tape measure shot. That has got to be the longest home run I have ever seen hit in Crosley Field, or hit out of it.
Larry Dierker was another of the young Astro stars to achieve a personal milestone. Dierker had been with the team since 1964, and in 1969, he became the first Astro pitcher to win 20 games in a single season. In 1969, the Astros finally played to a different tune as they reached the 500 mark for the first time in team history. After losing over 90 games for the 7th year in a row, the Astros had finally achieved respectability. 1969, however, was also the year that baseball changed to a divisional format. And despite their record, the Astros still finished next to last in a 6-team division.
A lot of times you look at a ball club and say, well, that was a bad ball club, but we didn't have a bad ball club. It's just that there were a couple other ball clubs that were very, very good at that time.
So the Astros looked ready to blast off when the 60s came to an end. They hoped that they too would be able to reach the same heights that their astronaut counterparts had at the close of the decade, when man walked on the moon for the first time.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hello, I'm Gene Cernan. I came to Houston back in 1963 when I was selected as an astronaut, and I've lived here and called Houston my home ever since. As we've already seen, I think I can safely say that in that first decade, we had just a little bit more success in space than the Astros were able to achieve here on the ground. In fact, while the Astros were still reaching for the moon in the beginning of the 70s, there were those of us at NASA who had already spent a few days walking and even riding on the surface. During that time, however, the Astros were showing signs of turning it around. In 1972, and I do remember that year well because that's when I had the privilege of taking those final steps on the surface of the moon, the Astros even finished over 500 for the first time in their history. And from that point on, they continued to improve in a decade that saw us both moving on to bigger and better things.
In the 70s, the space program proceeded to roll out incredible achievements as the Apollo missions to the moon became almost commonplace. But back on Earth, major changes were taking place. Becoming a focus of world attention, the city of Houston adapted readily to an era in which the importance of oil was unprecedented. Meanwhile, the Astros approached the decade with a leg up. There was more quality talent on the team than ever before and a growing eagerness to get things going.
The 70s were probably the most frustrating time in the existence of the Houston franchise because it was time, or past time, for the ball club to produce on the field.
In the early part of the decade, the Astros may not have won many games, but they did produce a lot of runs. Jimmy Wynn was still hitting his share of home runs, and he was joined in the lineup by a number of other outstanding hitters, too. Jesus Alou had come over from the San Francisco Giants in 1969 and hit over 300 in 2 of the first 3 years during the 70s. Around the same time, Bob Watson began a series of 5 seasons in which he would hit over 300 4 times. Then there was Lee May, who made his presence felt from 1972 through 1974 when he averaged 96 RBIs a year. Yet this group was not fated to remain together for too long.
When you start looking at the players who were on that club that were traded off, and they weren't trying to trade to hurt themselves, in essence, they really should have competed before they did.
Despite the many trades, the Astros still remained a 500 club, and eventually the changes reached the front office as well. Tal Smith took over as general manager in August of 1975, and his first move was to install Bill Verdon as manager.
There was some talent there, and it wasn't one of the situations where you just couldn't see any hope at all because you had some Cedenios and Watsons and Cruzes and that made it. You could see the light at the end of the tunnel. It takes time, you know.
Patience was a characteristic virtue of Bill Verdon's, and it went well with his thorough knowledge of the game. But the particular asset that Verdon had to make the most of was the skill and talent of Cesar Cedeno. Cedeno had been the Astros' most dependable player since his first full season in Houston in 1971. And he soon became the first player in the history of baseball to hit 20 homers and steal 50 bases in successive seasons. Though some say he may have sold his talent short, the Astros never had a player better than Cesar Cedeno. Like Cedeno, the Astros themselves were at times up and down during the 70s. One thing, however, remained consistent, and that was the Astros pitchers' uncanny ability to write themselves into the record books by pitching no-hitters. On July 9th, 1976, it was Larry Dierker's turn. That night, Dierker excited the Astrodome crowd by handcuffing the Montreal Expos all night long in a 6-0 win that gave him the 5th no-hitter in Houston history. That same season, J.R. Richard became one of the best pitchers in the league by winning 20 games. Then in 1978, Richard became the first right-hander in National League history to strike out over 300 batters in a single season. The next year, he was even better, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the Astros were poised to take off. Off the field in 1979, the Astros were sold to a new owner who had done some careful franchise shopping.
I actually felt that Houston was by far the most attractive one of the 4 or 5 that were available that time. Not only because of the situation as it involved the Astrodome and the team and so forth, but also because of Houston itself, which was at that time one of the great thriving cities of the United States.
Indeed, the Astros were thriving in 1979, and proof of that came very early in the season. On April 7th, in a game at the Dome against the Atlanta Braves, right-hander Ken Forsch was working on a masterpiece in just the 7th game of the season. Forsch was making history in familiar Astro fashion as he stood on the verge of Houston no-hitter number 6.
The crowd cheering on their feet. The pitch to Hubbard. Bouncing ball to short. Reynolds field. 12 to first. No-hitter for Ken Forsch. Ken Forsch has pitched a no-hitter as Houston wins their second straight. Final score 6-0.
Forsch's no-hitter was also the start of something big, as the Astros stayed hot, winning 15 of 21 games in April to move out to a 4-game lead in the National League West. After so much trial and error, talent and confidence had finally merged.
From the very start of that season, we began to believe in ourselves. We had a pretty good start that year, and the more ball games we won, the better we got.
J.R. Richard was on his way to 18 wins and league-leading totals in strikeouts and ERA, while Joe Niekro also pitched in with a quality season by winning 21 games of his own. The Astros would remain in first place for most of the year, but inexperience eventually caught up with them.
We put together quite a season. At midway, somewhere in there, we were 10.5 games ahead, I recall. A lot of young guys were very excited, and then I remember that Tom Seaver of the Reds said we were going to fall like a lead balloon, and that proceeded to take place. We let the Reds overtake us, and we wound up losing by 1.5 games that year.
Undoubtedly, 1979 brought its big red frustrations. But as the decade ended, the Astros were just 1.5 games from their goal. Winning 89 games, Bill Verdon was elected the National League Manager of the Year and probably could have won more than that. Following the season, the Astros picked up 2 experienced free agents. Joe Morgan would be returning to Texas, along with native son Nolan Ryan, who would look very good indeed in the Astros' colors. Meanwhile, NASA was experimenting with new ideas too, like the Skylab and Apollo-Soyuz programs, which both served as a prelude for what lay ahead.
Hello, I'm Steve Hawley. I was a mission specialist astronaut aboard the Space Shuttles Discovery and Columbia. The 1980s brought a new beginning for both the space program and the Astros. For us, the Space Shuttle presented a new way to reach for the stars. The same was true for the Astros, who began the 1980s by reaching for the stars themselves. For them, that meant first place, a position they attained for the first time in 1980. Since then, we've both had our good times and our bad. But the important thing to remember is that we both gave our best all of the time. In this, their 25th year, the Astros not only reached for the stars, they touched them. And you can bet that one day soon, we will too once again. But looking back at the beginning of the decade, we were both on top of the world.
When the Space Shuttle first blasted off in the 80s, it marked the culmination of a dream that had taken years to fulfill. And although they didn't realize it at the time, the same was about to happen to the Astros when they came to spring training in 1980. After coming so close in 1979, the Astros were now favored to win the West, especially with the off-season additions of Nolan Ryan and Joe Morgan, whose talent, experience, and leadership figured to make the difference.
I think everybody had a good feeling about it, yes. You know, especially if you go out and get Ryan and Joe Morgan comes to your club, and people who are already there and been through it, I think they had the feeling that they were going to be successful.
The Astros did have every reason to be successful, so their quick start was no surprise. With their cast of seasoned veterans performing up to expectations, the Astros were able to gain first place by the end of April. Jose Cruz was especially tough that year as he hit over 300 and was named the Astros MVP, thanks in large part to his career high, 15 game-winning RBIs. At the All-Star break, the Astros were still sure they'd win the division, but then tragedy struck the team and its star pitcher. J.R. Richard, who had been pitching just as well as he had in his previous 2 seasons, suffered a stroke on July 30th. Just 2 weeks earlier, Richard had started the All-Star game as the league's premier pitcher, but now, suddenly, his career was over.
What was going through my mind is that God has something other for me other than baseball. That he has something else planned for me outside of baseball.
To see such misfortune strike so close to home had to be especially tough on the Astros, and though Richard would eventually return to the Dome later in the year, his attempts to pitch again would ultimately fail.
Right in the middle of probably the best career any pitcher's ever had, and it did happen, and it's very unfortunate. The one thing about the situation that I remember, good clubs that go on to win, clubs that are noted for their capabilities of winning, have some depth. And if there was any depth on our club, it was in our pitching.
That pitching depth, of course, had been strengthened even more in the offseason with the addition of Ryan, who went on to win 11 games in his first season as an Astro. The ace of the staff, though, turned out to be Joe Niekro, who won 20 games for the second consecutive year. But still, the real key to the Astros' success was Morgan.
The players knew I was only concerned with us winning the pennant. I'd already hit 300. I'd already been the most valuable player in the league twice. I'd already won 2 world championships. The only concern I had was for the team and for us to win.
So win the Astros did, especially late in the season when the pennant race really kicked up its heels. First, the Astros disposed of the arch-rival Cincinnati Reds, and by late September, the only competition came from the Dodgers. On the last weekend of the season, the Astros went to Dodger Stadium, leading by 3 games with 3 to play. But the Dodgers won the series' first game on an extra-inning home run by Joe Ferguson. Los Angeles won the next day, too, and then the next to tie the Astros on the last day of the season. But just when everyone was expecting the worst, Joe Niekro put a cap on his brilliant season by pitching superbly in the resulting 1-game playoff for the Western Division title. Joe's knuckler kept the Dodgers tied up in knots all day long, until finally it was time to celebrate.
The 1-1 pitch, a bouncing ball to the right side. Bergman has it, steps on first, and the Astros have won the National League West. Bill Burton finally, after 4 days, a smile creasing his face. And the celebration.
I wasn't that confident Saturday and Sunday after losing, but I was confident Monday. It all fell in place for us on Monday rather than Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And then we, of course, went into the playoff.
The playoffs that year between the Astros and the Philadelphia Phillies will long be remembered as a classic. 4 of the 5 games went into extra innings, and each one was more dramatic than the last.
It was great plays, great hitting. I mean, guys were jumping over the railings and stuff, catching balls, cheering, and you know, it was exciting. You know, it was almost nerve-wracking. You know, if you had a weak heart, you couldn't take that serious.
10 hits in the ball game, evenly divided, but the Astros have the only run. They were able to bunch 3 singles. Rose at first with 2 down and a full count to the ball. Hit a ton to left field. Luzinski has homered. Phillies lead the ball game 2-1.
Close game, but not really an exciting game. Force pitched a fine game. Held him close, but you know, the 1 pitch got him. The next game was one of those games where we jumped out in front after it went into extra innings. And I still remember, I always remember having to face Mike Smith with 2 men on and us leading 7-4.
It's 3-0 to Schmidt. He has the green light, 3-0, and a fly ball to right. Cool under the ball. He makes the catch, and the Astros win. It was not easy, but the Astros hold on in the 10th inning and defeat the Philadelphia Phillies.
It's hard to explain the feeling, you know. First of all, we clinch it one day, and then we fly coast to coast and lose the first game in Philadelphia. But we split up there, and we came back and won the third game here. All of that just happened so quick. It was like the season just kept running for us because every game was important all year long.
Houston nothing, Philadelphia nothing. Nobody out, one strike on Denny Walling. McGraw ready again. Here's the 0-2 to Walling. Fly ball to left field. All right, here comes Landeskog. They're calling it in. McGraw. Astros win.
We won that game 1-0, and we were leading the next game. There again was nerve-wracking, if you want to call it that. I think in that fourth game, that's when all the questionable plays happened.
2-1 pitch. And a popper into short right. The catch by McBride, tagged by Woods. He's going to try to score, and the throw is going to be offline. Woods scores standing up. Phillies are going to come up with an appeal play at third. Nose flips the ball to Schmidt, and Woods is out.
That's when Rose scored on the ball off the wall. It was a short hop to the catcher when he would have been out from here to the wall, but it just one of those situations that paid off for him.
1-0 pitch on the way. Luzinski with a long drive down the left field side. It's going to be one bouncing to the fence. Rose is going to third. They're going to wave it around, and Landeskog's throw is bobbled by Bochy. He comes up with it and can't hang on as Rose scores.
That last game, one incident that really I guess I'll never forget. I got an infield single late in the ball game, and we'd taken the lead early, and the Phillies scrapped back and took the lead back again. And I got to first base, and Pete Rose made a comment to me like, "It's a shame somebody's got to lose this ball game." And I turned to Pete and I said, "It's not over yet." And sure enough, we came back and took the lead again in that ball game. I think it was about the 7th inning this time, something like that. And then the Phillies came back and won it again late in the ball game. So it was a great ball game. I remember Pete's comment though about it's a shame somebody has to lose the series, which is true. It was a shame somebody had to lose.
Come up on their feet. Here's the windup on the 3-2 pitch to Cabell. There's a drive into right center field. Maddox is there. It's all over. The Phillies have won it. Philadelphia has won the National League Championship.
I recall as we lost that final game, sitting in the clubhouse, and everybody just sat there, just totally blown out. I recall seeing tears in a number of the guys' faces, and just kind of total disbelief that we weren't coming back.
The players. Most of the guys said I wouldn't cry, but shoot, I couldn't help myself because, you know, we really gave it our all, and we still ended up losing.
Next year was a tale of two seasons as the Astros got beat in their opener in Dodger Stadium by a relatively unknown rookie named Fernando Valenzuela. From there, the Astros kept losing, dropping 12 of their first 15, and eventually finding themselves 8.5 games out on June 11th when a players' strike stopped play for 2 months. But when play resumed, the Astros returned to their play of old, winning 7 of their first 10 after the break and moving into first place for good on August 30th. Don Sutton, who was acquired after the '80 season, was one reason for the turnaround, which also featured another history-making event by another Astro pitcher on September 26th.
Well, this is it now, the top of the 9th inning. It is 5-0. The Astros are up on top of the Dodgers. 10 strikeouts for Ryan, 3 bases on balls, and he has not given up a hit.
Actually, that 5th no-hitter came in the 1981 season. It was in September, and we were a game of the week on a Saturday afternoon. And Nolan had been pitching outstanding, so it really didn't come as a big shock that he came through with a big game right then. And I recall there really was nothing. There was a ball that Mike Scioscia had hit into right center that Terry Poole made a great play on somewhere midway in that ball game.
Poole on the run for it and got it.
And then from then on, there was really nothing that resembled a hit. I remember Dusty Baker, a very hot hitter at the time, coming to plate representing the last out of the game.
Trying to get another one today, and he has Baker standing in his way. 2 balls and no strikes to Baker, and a ground ball to third. He has got it, Art. How? He got it! Nolan Ryan! No-hitter number 5.
That's probably the most rewarding no-hitter of the 5 because it came later in my career, and it was in a pennant race.
That particular pennant race ended with the Astros in first place, And it put them in the first ever divisional playoffs in which the Astros had to face the Dodgers. In Game 1 that year, the score was tied in the bottom of the ninth when catcher Alan Ashby gave Houston fans something to remember.
First pitch to Ashby, and Ashby looks a long fly ball to right field. That's gone. That's a home run. It's all over. The Astros win it. 3-1.
The Astros won the next night in exciting fashion, too. But things changed when they traveled to Los Angeles. The Astros never got the one win that would have won the division for them, as the Dodgers won 3 straight to take the series. The loss seemed to take a lot out of the Astros, and their fortunes changed soon after that. But individual achievements still made headlines, like the day in 1983 when Nolan Ryan broke Walter Johnson's all-time strikeout record against the Montreal Expos.
Ryan easily tops the list of pitchers having reached the 3,000 mark sooner than any of the others. Number 3,000 was Chief Geronimo. The 1-2 pitch, strike 3 call on Mills, and there's the record breaker. 3,509 strikeouts for Nolan Ryan.
Jose Cruz provided continued excellence for the Astros during those struggling times, hitting over 300 for 3 years in a row. But Cruz couldn't do it all alone. And the Astros tested the waters of mediocrity for 4 straight seasons starting in 1982, leaving general manager Al Rosen and manager Bob Lillis with plenty to complain about. Injuries played a large part in the team's decline, including a particularly devastating one to shortstop Dickie Thon, which kept him out of the lineup for the better part of 2 seasons. Finally, in September of '85, the Astros felt they needed to make a change. With the team headed for a disappointing finish once again, John McMullen decided that he needed to make some changes at the top. His first move was to select a new general manager, and the man he picked, Dick Wagner, had helped put together the Big Red Machine in Cincinnati during the 1970s.
I think Dick has brought a very, very strong managerial capability and also an excellent knowledge of the game. He's been in baseball.
My goal is to get everybody to participate, to work together, to get good people, and I think we were able to get good people.
Those good people began with manager Hal Lanier, a selection that in retrospect turned out to be nothing but brilliant. Lanier brought with him a winning style and attitude which caught the attention of his players immediately and changed the way they felt about themselves.
I think that in Lanier we found a real interesting answer to the various needs that we saw.
I'm very happy to be chosen for the managing job. When I was announced manager of the ball club, it's an opportunity for me. It was a challenge to me, and hopefully we can end up on a great note.
At the beginning of his first season, Lanier sure had the Astros start out on a great note. Thanks to a recurring pattern the past couple of seasons, the people of Houston had come to expect a slow start from the Astros. But with Lanier leading the way, 1986 was completely the opposite. Despite preseason predictions that said otherwise, the Astros got off to a quick start, winning 13 of their first 19 games. Not only were the Astros exciting their fans with winning baseball, they were also winning in exciting ways.
Look for Smitty to go with that curveball outside, I think, this time. Got him! Game is over. Smash to short. Pick it. Flip it. Fire it. Double play. Game is over. What a way to end it. The pitch.
And it gets away from Diaz. Houston wins 1-0.
The whole team has had the ability to contribute and to come through when the game is on the line. Might be Kevin tonight, might be Glenn another night, might be Chell Cruz another night. It could be anybody tonight.
Boy, what a tonic this could be if you could pull it out.
Oh.
Trailing by a run in the ninth. There's a drive. Way back. Going. Good night. Going. Holy Toledo, it's gone.
By the All-Star break, the Astros were just a game behind the surprising San Francisco Giants in first, and the rest of the country was beginning to take notice. Of course, it didn't hurt that the All-Star game was played in the Dome and that 4 Astros were named to the team. Outfielder Kevin Bass was joined as a first-time star by first baseman Glenn Davis. Of course, the Astros' vaunted pitching staff was represented too, with Mike Scott, the National League strikeout leader, and one of the game's premier relief pitchers, Dave Smith. Astro fans also got to cheer for their hometown heroes, especially Scott, who pitched 1 inning and struck out 2 batters in the American League's 3-2 win. When the season started up again, the Astros resumed their title drive and began a remarkable streak in the process. 5 consecutive times the Astros went into their final at-bat either tied or behind, and 5 times they came away winners.
4-4 tie, 2 outs. Oh, watch it. Look out. Watch it. It's gone. Home run for Craig Reynolds. Oh, baby. And for all you fans who left early, tough luck.
The 0-2 pitch to Bass and a tap to the first baseman. Fielded by Hernandez. The throw. Too late. The Astros win. The Astros win as Thorne beats the throw by Hernandez. And they're all over the place.
Oh, this crowd is up. They're trying to see him do it for the 3rd straight game. Smash, fair ball. Astros win. Astros win. Astros win again.
Astros have 2 hits as we start the bottom of the 10th inning. Oh, yeah. Bye-bye. Oh. Oh. And look at the Astros come out of the dugout. Oh, baby. 10 games over 500. It's Dickie Thon on second base with 2 outs. Single to left field. It's the game winner. The Astros win it. Davey Lopes delivers.
If you haven't gotten excited yet about this 1986 Houston Astros baseball team, I don't know what it takes.
Each time there was another game out there to be won, another player did something to win it. 24 times the Astros won in their last at-bat with Lanier's style of box office baseball.
I think it says a lot about the character of the ball club, about the never say die attitude.
I think our team attitude the whole year has been never say never. And as all our come from behind games have said, we always do it.
The biggest reason why the Astros were able to do it was their pitching staff. Mike Scott's 18 wins topped a staff that included lefty Bob Nepper, who won 17. They were joined by the ageless Nolan Ryan, an up-and-coming Jim DeShays, and the versatile Danny Darwin. Then there was reliever Charlie Kerfeld, who not only became a legendary character in just his first season, but also added strength to an Astro bullpen that was anchored by Dave Smith. In '86, Smith again had an outstanding year, and with him and the rest of the Astro staff pitching extremely well down the stretch, the Astros were pulling away in the West. Astro pitchers were exciting their fans with uncommon regularity, but there were times that stood out, like the night Jim DeShays set a modern-day Major League record.
He's got 7. He's working on 8 in a row to get this ball game underway. This is amazing. 8 consecutive strikeouts. Every player is up on the railing, applauding along with the crowd. Look at him, everybody.
By September, there was no stopping the Astros. With their lead in the West approaching double figures, the Astros set their sights on the franchise's 2nd division title, and Astrodome fans were more than ready to party. Fittingly, with Mike Scott on the mound, the moment arrived. Scott was clearly the Astros' best pitcher in 1986, and in the pennant clincher he proved that and more. Not only was he about to lead the Astros to the playoffs, he was going to pitch a no-hitter while he was doing it.
Now the hitter is Will Clark. He's 0 for 3. Swinging a bouncer. This could be it. Davis runs to the bag. Game is over. No-hitter. Astros win the championship. What a way to do it. Mike Scott has just thrown his first career no-hitter, and the Astros are the National League champions of the West. Holy Toledo!
So it was on to the playoffs, where the Astros found themselves set to battle the New York Mets, the team with the most wins in baseball. But the Astros had Mike Scott, and right away he showed why he became only the second right-handed pitcher in National League history to strike out over 300 batters in a single season. The lone run of the game came in the second inning, and it came off the bat of Glenn Davis.
1-0 pitch to Davis. Fly ball deep center field. Dykstra to the wall, and that's out of here. Home run for Glenn Davis.
The Astros made Davis's homer stand up, first by playing outstanding defense, and then by relying on Scott.
2 balls, 2 strikes, and 2 away. Runner at third base. Pitch on the way tonight. Swing and a miss. Game is over. Astros win. 14 strikeouts. And Scott has shut down the mighty Mets.
But the mighty Mets came back the next day and beat the Astros 5-1 to even the series. The series then shifted to New York, where the Astros wound up getting off to an extremely explosive start, roughing up Mets starter Ron Darling for 2 runs in the first. Later, the team's spark plug, Bill Doran, came through with the Astros' second homer of the series. His 2-run shot to right with the man on base gave the Astros a seemingly safe 4-0 lead. But the Mets battled back, and then with the Astros leading by 1 in the bottom of the 9th, Dave Smith surrendered a 2-run homer to Lenny Dykstra, which won the game. The next night, though, the Astros played their ace, and once again, Mike Scott came through by thoroughly dominating the suddenly weak-hitting Mets, even though things were a little rougher for Scott this time around. Just like in Game 1, the Astros would get Scott all the runs he would need thanks to a home run.
Here's the pitch. Swinging. Fly ball left field. Left fielder back. Still back. Looks up. It is gone. Holy Toledo! Alan Ashby bangs one and circles second with his fist high in the air.
Given Scott's '86 season, his performance might have been considered routine, but in actuality, his 3-hitter was a remarkable piece of pitching. In his last start of the year, Scott not only helped the Astros tie the series at 2 games apiece, he also showed just why he was the league's best pitcher. Following a rainout, the forecast again called for bad weather, and after a sunny start, the day did indeed become a washout for Nolan Ryan and the Astros. For 4+ innings, Ryan pitched brilliant baseball, protecting the Astros' 1-0 lead and taking a perfect game into the 5th. But after retiring 13 consecutive batters, Darryl Strawberry finally got hold of a Ryan pitch and sent it down the right field line to tie a game that the Mets eventually won in 12 innings, 2-1. So it was back to Houston for Game 6, with the Astros now trailing the Mets 3-2. The Astrodome fans were confident that their team would be able to work their '86 come-from-behind magic on a broader scale, and Bob Nepper was called on to get the job done. In the top of the first, Nepper did just that, confusing the Mets as they went down in order. Then, in the bottom of the first, the Astros went to work. Phil Garner lined a double up the gap in left center, and when Billy Hatcher scored, the Astros had a 1-0 lead. Then, after scoring twice more in the inning to take a 3-0 lead, the Mets looked like a beaten team, especially the way Nepper was pitching. shutting the Mets down on just one hit through the first 8 innings. But in the 9th, things came unraveled for Nepper and the Astros. First, Lenny Dykstra led off with a triple, and from there, the Mets went on a tear. By the time they were through, the score was tied. And then in the 14th, with the Mets up by 1 run, the Astros' never-say-die attitude came through again. And this time, the hero of the day was Billy Hatcher.
Orozco ready, pitch to Hatcher. There's a drive, way back into left field. It is gone! A foul pole home run! Holy Toledo!
Almost miraculously, the Astros had risen from the dead to tie the score at 4. Then in the 16th, the Mets went up by 3 runs. But the Astros came back with 2 of their own and had runners on first and second with Kevin Bass at the plate. But this time, the Astros couldn't clear the final hurdle. For the Astros, the loss in Game 6 was particularly hard to take. It was tough to come so close and then have it all slip away.
I thought I had it this time. I thought the dream would be mine. Hoping to fly, I thought. Oh, how I wish I just didn't care at all. 'Cause when you don't care, you don't cry. It won't hurt if you don't try. But I still believe in all my dreams and all that I can be. I'll learn from mistakes, all that it takes to make it eventually. 'Cause I still believe, I still believe, yes, I still believe.
For 25 years, baseball has been an integral part of Houston. From the Colt 45s of '62 to the champions of the '80s, the memories are all part of a Silver Odyssey never to be forgotten.
And Cincinnati wins it by a score of 1-0. As Johnson pitched a no-hitter and lost the ball game by Wrangler racing hard. He's going to get it. He's got it. And Notabart has pitched a no-hitter. Here's the windup of the 3-2 pitch to Johnny Bench. He got him. 18 strikeouts. And Don Wilson. Morgan hits one to deep right center field all the way to the wall on this one. The drive there, and he can't get it.
Deep fly ball to left field. Mookie Wilson all the way to the wall, leaps and can't get it, and it's a home run for Dickie Thon. First pitch by Scott. Popped him up to center field. The Astros win it.